We got a mic, we got a mic, we got a mic. I have not been wanting to set up this mic because I couldn't find the cord, but I found the cord and we're back in business, baby. Something about starting a video and seeing that the person has a mic actually repulses me. I don't know why. It reminds me of video essays. It reminds me of performative YouTube. It just reminds me trying too hard, but here I am with a mic. I've had it this whole time, but just seeing it. And I've tried the whole like microphone thing too. I think it just establishes way too much authority when I'm really here to chill. Like I'm not taking this too seriously. So I hope you don't find yourself repulsed by seeing that I have a mic. And I promise I'm not trying too hard. What if I do this? If only I could hide it. But the audio, I will admit, is 10 times better. I just have not been trying. Anyways, if you're black, welcome. If you're not, also welcome. But this video is going to be about black history and black culture through all the books that I would read in high school, and I'm sure you've read too, but I thought were extremely boring because I wasn't trying to do all that. I didn't understand it, but now I'm revisiting literature from high school and it was actually pretty goated. It was actually pretty interesting, and I find that the biggest cliches, the biggest lessons that we have in this life come from old literature. And these aren't even that old. So I want to explore two of these books with y'all, and then one that's newer that's been published in, I believe, the past few years. It's not even like an old book for real, but it ties in to the theme of black people and our evolution throughout the years and how how we've formed a culture based on our past, our history, our slavery, and how that generational trauma just seeps into modern life. Oh my God, 2016. This is pretty recent. No, wait, that was 10 years ago. Hold on. 2016 was 10 years ago? That's the biggest discovery. Y'all, I figured out that I'm 27 and I thought I was 26 this whole time. Like, I've been correcting people. I'll go to like an appointment or something and they'll be like, can you confirm the information? I'm like, oh, everything's right but the age. You got me at 27. I don't know why I'm 27 on here. But okay, anyways, that was a big moment for me. Anyways, the succession of our deep dive literature is about the effects of slavery on black culture. And I love books about slavery, and I have a couple more, but I kind of want to hone in on sort of this chronological order with the books, starting from way back to, our capture and moving forward into really post-slavery, like really fresh. We're talking runaway slaves, we're talking about Harriet Tubman, that kind of era. And then more of a modern era, like 1960s Chicago, people still living and trying to gain acceptance and equality. I just love black history and all of the different time periods. I think my most favorite is that not necessarily Chicago, but the 1960s era, because I see a lot of the qualities of life then reflected now, and you just see behaviors in people and our cultural similarities, and you can just see like, oh, that's tied to slavery. Like how it's a cliche how we can't swim, but there's a reason for that. Like it's embedded in our trauma that we experienced centuries ago. Like that's a real thing passed down throughout the years. Now, obviously we can swim, but if you want to argue, just say you want to argue. Anyways, we're going to start like chronologically the furthest back, and that's actually with the newest book that I have, and that is Homegoing. It's about two half sisters in Ghana One of them gets sold to slavery, another one stays within the tribe and lives her life in Ghana as one of the colonizer's wife. And the crazy part is they're in this castle, a real castle, by the way, on the coast of Ghana that would house the slaves. It was a place for trading and everything. And one of the half sisters is living in the castle on the top floors, being the wife, living that life. And then the other half sister that was captured from the tribe, sold off by one of the actual tribes in Ghana, like from black person to white person. It wasn't the colonizers capturing them, which is crazy. Like it'd be your own people sometimes. But she is also in the castle, but on the lower levels, in the basement, in all the feces infested, people stacked on top of each other. Just, oh my God, it is so good. And the author, she said that she was inspired by actually visiting the castle. She had been having like this writer's block, but she visits the castle, and then just, you can feel you can just feel the trauma within the lower levels, the basement. Even though it was empty, it still had like this like hint of feces smell. It's like walking up onto a plantation. You can kind of feel uneasy because I think the spirits of the people still reside within the place. Oh my God, isn't that crazy? But yeah, this book is basically about the different sisters' lineage and how like the African American lineage had started, and then the Ghanaian lineage was, like the difference between, well, what if I was captured? What would that look like generations down? And there's this really interesting, I might spoil it. No, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's this really, it's narrated by like each generation. There's a main character. But there's this one that is really interesting. He's a coal miner, and it's crazy because like we're years away from slavery, but it's like the new age slavery and how slavery continues, but just in a different form. And I think even today we see that with the way capitalism forms our society, and we have to focus on productivity. And a lot of people tie productivity to purpose, and the slavery just goes on and on and on, but just different forms. We're not sharecroppers. We're not like on the field. We're in our homes and at our jobs, but we're like feeding into these companies, and we don't really get to live. Well, that's if you're like working for a company. But anyways, I think this just dates way, way back to like the beginnings of what it was like before slavery started, like what it was like in the tribes and all that. So I just love to hear about the culture back then, and I'm very tied to my culture, and I'm still learning. By the way, this video isn't like factual. If you want to get the facts right and the time periods or whatever, look it up. I'm just a girl. But yeah, we're just chit-chatting. So the next one in succession is, this one we didn't read in high school, but it's very interesting. This one we did. It's Beloved by Toni Morrison. And I know the discourse about her works is that it's very confusing, but when you get into it, oh my God, like the message behind it is so interesting. And it's based off of a true story of a slave, a woman who was a slave, and people were coming. She had been freed, like she ran away and she had her kids, and people had been chasing her to try to capture her and bring her back to slavery. So once they find her, she starts to murder her children so that they don't have to go back into the life that she came from. And it explores the idea of how far would a mother go to protect her children, and was this moral? And they had a case, a trial on the woman, the real story. And it was like, should we send her to jail? Should we try her? But the dilemma there was, if we're, saying that she committed this crime, then we would have to consider her a human being and not a piece of property, because an animal that does something like this, like, they're not going to court. So it was very, very interesting, and the historical ties were also very interesting, like how we come from a place of, you know, were we even considered human? And it does explore morality, because at times what this book is about is that woman who did, it's inspired by that true story, but the woman that did commit the crime in Beloved, her name's Setha, her baby comes back to haunt her. I didn't understand that at first. I was like, ghost baby, what the heck? It's 10 p.m. and I got to read and write about a ghost baby. What the hell is this about? But now I'm like, ghost baby. Oh, like, how revolutionary, ghost baby. It still is hard to read. But, and it is like in a kind of like, it's not chronological, like pieces of the story from like back then when she was on the plantation, and then currently, and then like when she freshly reached the city that she's living in, and flashbacks back then of what it was like running away, and then currently her baby, and then back then her baby. You kind of got to put it together. It's like you'll read a whole paragraph not really knowing what it's about or who's speaking until the end. Sometimes it'll have limited dialogue. It's just like such a beautiful curation of a story. And, you know, I got to get into more Toni Morrison. It just makes you think. It makes you, oh my God, I hate stories that are very like Gen Z, easy for you to understand, using like modern terms. If I see the word Instagram, I'm done. I don't want to see it. But this really grounds you and takes you back. So this is like a very fresh post-slavery story. It's like a capture of life in a certain time period, which I love. So obviously go and read some Toni Morrison. It's going to make you think, it's going to make you feel smarter, or it's going to make you feel dumber. Depends on where you're at in life. But yeah, I love that. And then my absolute favorite, which I thought was completely boring in high school, but now it is my favorite play. It's a play in the world. It is Fences. I love Fences by August Wilson. And I did actually annotate, go in there and actually see what was up. But it's about this man, 1960s Chicago. He had a dream of being a baseball player, but he didn't make it, and he kind of projects that onto his son. You know, and he has his own ideologies that don't match up with his family. Like, he has a certain way of thinking, and I think that's very resonant to maybe first generation, maybe, you know, the generation now that just doesn't resonate with their parents, like Gen X. Like, it's a completely different world, especially most of our society being digital. Like, our parents don't think the same way. So yeah, it's about that man not really relating to his family and his struggles of like trying to be a man, but also being oppressed by the system and capitalism in his own way. And just like how Black people struggle still, but more in like that trying to feel worthy in society, like trying to make it monetarily. I love it. I love it. I love it. And then that in succession affects his family. It's like he puts on this mask of this like successful man, and like he's a family man, but at the same time he still holds trauma passed down from generations that most of it isn't even his. It's the generational trauma. That's more of an abstract interpretation of it. But you see relationships around him change as the book goes on. And then with the idea of fences, he's building a fence throughout the entire story. Sammy, come here. Come here. Sammy, no. he's building a fence throughout the entire story, and it's kind of like a progress bar. The more he builds the fence, the more like the story builds up, and you know, like the where everything comes crumbling down, the climax of the story is towards the end, and it's a very, very slow build, which I love because I don't like the whole like fast, fast, fast. I think that's why they have short series. I don't like it dragging on and like having those spikes like every single episode. Give me one long thought out story and build it well, and have that climax or that like whoa moment be very well thought out, not just like dopamine spikes. So I love it. The struggle of Black America. I don't love struggle. This sounds weird, but the struggle of Black Americans and how it ties into like our history, and it just evolves over time. These are books that I really, really enjoy, and I think they encapsulate like a very concise timeline as far as how we've developed as people and how we continue to develop. I love African authors and African fiction and kind of like what it's like, hey, what it's like in Nigeria and Ghana and West Africa. I like connecting to that part of my culture. I have books also on what culture is actually like, nonfiction. The book Africa is Not a Country by Dipo Faloyin. Yeah, I think that one's pretty interesting. And also books that are just about slavery, like Night Wherever We Go. Any fictional story, historical fiction is super interesting to me. So I don't want this to be too long, but the literature that we read in high school, it was actually pretty deep, and I, didn't see how impactful it could be in my life. But now that I'm going back to all that old literature, my eyes are open and my brain has expanded so wide. But what do you think about the effects of slavery and the residuals of trauma on our society today? How do you feel like that shows up in your own family? Leave a comment down below and like the video if you feel like this resonated with you. It helps share my video to people that are just like you, and we can start a conversation. But thank you so much for watching my video, and don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.